Hey guys, I am out here to pick some peppers from the garden, and I wanted to take you guys along with me and kind of have a little chat about some stuff that has been on my mind lately. You probably read that title that I've got and are here for the somewhat controversial opinions. But let me just preface all of this by saying that I am open to changing my mind. You know, this is not set in stone the way I'm always going to think. I think it's really important to be ready to change your mind with new information being presented. But for now, with the information that I have, these are my thoughts. Here's our spider friend that tried to get in my hair on the last tour, and her male partner right there. Still safe and sound, right in the spot where they should be and not in my hair. So I've been thinking for a while about how the food system works overall. For a couple of years now, I've been growing my own food and thinking about the food that we get from the grocery store and kind of how vastly different the style of growing that food is, and what that means for not only the nutrition that we're putting in our bodies, but also for like the overall stability of people being able to get food. There are a few things that happen in traditional farming that I'm not really a huge fan of, and they affect the food that we are that we have available to eat pretty drastically. One of the things that I'm really not a big fan of is the idea of monoculturing all of our crops. That means growing a big field of just corn, of just one type of corn, and trying to make sure that no other plant other than corn is growing in that field. And this is a problem for several reasons. It's going to deplete the soil of a specific nutrient because all of those plants are feeding on the exact same nutrient, and that's going to require supplementation from outside, whether through compost, which would be nice, or more usually synthetic fertilizers, because they're treating large areas, and a synthetic liquid fertilizer is going to be like one of the most cost-effective ways for a farmer to replace those nutrients. Some people are also out here using cover crops for that, which is, you know, a step in the right direction, but it's still usually like a monoculture of a cover crop, which doesn't necessarily help the overall health of the soil. So we've got monocultures depleting a lot of a specific nutrient in the soil. We've got that same monoculture attracting a lot of a very specific type of pest that is going to want to feed on that crop, and that's usually going to require some method of pest control, generally a pesticide or a genetically modified crop that kills the thing that eats it. And both of these things create a hole in the ecosystem where there once was a bunch of this one insect or pest, and now it's not there, and things start getting really unbalanced in the ecosystem. This ripple effect just starts affecting the larger ecosystem, and we start seeing problems like, for instance, if you are poisoning rats, and then something eats that poisoned rat before it has fully died, then you're poisoning the thing that's eating that rat, and so on and so forth. And so we're out here basically intentionally limiting the biodiversity on large amounts of land, limiting the biodiversity of insects and animals, and limiting the biodiversity of the plants via weed control. And all of this is really, really bad for the microbes in the soil. They need a lot of different microbes, need a lot of different plants in order to kind of exist in this system that they've spent millions of years evolving into. And once you've got a monoculture, then suddenly a lot of the things that certain microbes need are not available. Specifically, we can see this with mycorrhizal fungi, which cannot actually interact with all types of plants. And so if you've got a monocrop of something that a mycorrhizal fungi can't interact with, can't exchange nutrients with, then that is going to leave and find somewhere else to be. And the next time you plant a crop there that maybe does interact with the mycorrhizal fungi, it's already gone. And then you have to start considering things like the actual varieties that we're choosing to monocrop. And these started out as like being some of the more nutritious or good calories type crops, and has more evolved into like what do people want to see in the stores and what is going to ship well and store well and be perfectly uniform all the time. And these things are sacrificing nutritional value. So there's not only not as much nutritional value in the soil to start with, there's not as much nutritional value from the plant itself, because we're not selecting for something that uptakes a lot of nutrients. And so all of this together is kind of creating this food system that is super reliant on a very limited number of crops. Like for example, I have had friends come to my garden and not even know that there are different varieties of stuff, because we're so used to like, oh, there's broccoli and it is the broccoli, there's corn and it is the corn, when really there's hundreds of different varieties of these things. And big agriculture has just decided that this is the one variety that you're going to be able to get in the store. This is the one variety that everybody is going to grow, and it's going to look uniform, and no matter where you get it from, you know what to expect. And I do want to emphasize here that I don't think that farmers are the villains. The people who are growing our food are so necessary, especially right now, and the way that we've set up this somewhat delicate system. They are sitting there doing the best that they can, because the profit margin for farming is incredibly tiny. And once you have a farm that has been running on a monocrop and has been using pesticides and fertilizers, it's really, really hard to get out of that. You would need, you know, a substantial amount of savings and be ready for a substantial amount of loss in order to transition to something that's more sustainable and is going to build the soil and is going to give you more nutritious food out. And having healthier, more nutritious food coming out of your farm isn't even necessarily profitable, because if you're growing varieties that are uncommon, or you know, you're growing produce that doesn't look exactly like what customers expect in the store, it's going to be a lot harder to sell that produce somewhere. And so yeah, I definitely don't blame farmers. They essentially have their hands tied the way our current system is set up. The real enemy, I think, is capitalism. And that's a whole other can of worms to get into. But basically, as I've been saying, the system in which these farmers are existing is limiting what they can do, because they must farm a certain way in order to make a profit, in order to be able to live. And I'm not out here claiming to have all the answers. I know I don't. I know that me making this one video probably isn't going to change very much. But what I can do is educate people and talk about the problem, and hopefully through the power of collective thinking, we can start figuring out how we can work together to solve this problem. One of the things that I think would really help is changing the system such that it's not a small number of farmers supplying for the world, and is more smaller farmers providing for their local area. I think that would take a lot of the pressure off of not only the farmers but also the food system, because as we saw during COVID, this system is really delicately balanced, right? Because you've got large suppliers shipping out to large areas, and if one of those suppliers or one or two is compromised, then you know, suddenly the whole system is thrown way out of balance, and that's dangerous for our food supply. Whereas if you have a few different local farmers that you can get from. If somebody has a bad year, then, you know, most people are still doing okay. And I know that the way that we've, again, set up our system is such that we sort of rely on these large-scale farmers because we have a lot of people living in places where you can't grow food for miles. Like, think about living in the middle of New York City. You know, there's not like really a whole lot that you can do to provide a substantial amount of food for yourself or your community. So I would say that what we're looking at is kind of a giant, large-scale societal transition, which isn't going to be fast and it's not going to be easy, but I think it will eventually be necessary, because I don't think that we can continue like this. I don't think we can continue depleting the soil and using pesticides and using herbicides that are like polluting our water and, you know, so many things. Sorry, I got super distracted by the neighbor's dogs barking, but yeah, basically I guess what I'm getting to is, what can you do, especially if you don't have the means to grow a lot of food yourself? And I think advocation is one, talking to people about this problem and just supporting people who are trying to solve it. But two, and more like immediate, is I think eating seasonally can really help. If you can not expect to have all of the produce all the time in stores, like if we can do that en masse as a society, that will reduce the shipping of food that is not in season massively, and will reduce a lot of pressure on the systems to produce food for a global audience. And then eat from local farmers. I know a lot of supermarkets, especially in my area, have a like local produce section. And I think trying to buy from there first and helping support the people who are already close to you and trying to farm on a smaller scale can be really beneficial. And again, I am not the end-all be-all opinion on this. These are just my thoughts and me using my platform as a way to help inform as many people as possible. So in the interest of that, if you have thoughts, knowledge to share, you know, this is a community effort to solve this problem. So I, you know, greatly appreciate any knowledge that you have being shared in the comments below, because I would like to learn some more, and I think that everybody else in my audience would benefit from learning some more as well. So even if you don't feel like you have anything to contribute, definitely check out the comment section and just see what some of the wonderful people around here have to share. I didn't really get too many peppers today. I got a few butterfly pea flowers. But this is just the beginning. This is some of the first ones that are coming ripe, and I know it's late in September for these to be coming ripe for my first time, but you know, hot peppers were late this year. Anyways, there's a ton more green ones on the plants, so I think we'll definitely be seeing a lot more hot peppers. Thank you guys again so much for watching, and until next time, happy gardening!